Hi everyone, it's Allison. I haven't posted a video in a while. Like I thought, I sort of petered out on the 31 Days of Tarot challenge, just because some of the things I didn't really have much to say about. Just because what I do with tarot is super personal and just for me, really. But I have a couple little videos that I'm going to make today. So I've started with the more complex of them, and I'm kind of talking my way through this as I go. So I don't even really know what I'm talking about. I just think it's interesting. So, as always, if you find something useful in what I say or would like to contribute in the comments, that's awesome. If it doesn't resonate with you at all, then also awesome. Uh, do your own thing. But I wanted to talk today about the infamous stage cards in Pamela Coleman Smith's tarot. I'm just using actually, this is my very first tarot deck. I have a video about that and how I started in tarot, but so it's pretty old and a bit battered up. But sort of famously, Pamela Coleman Smith had tarot cards. I've brought out a couple examples. Um, there's lots. Most of the minor arcana have really scenic cards where the characters are right in the scenery. This is one of my favorite examples, the Three of Cups. I mean, they're dancing around the garden and the pumpkins, and it's pretty clear that this is meant to be an outdoor pastoral setting. But then we also have the stage cards here, where our little Two of Pence dude is clearly dancing on a stage with, that really sort of old-fashioned sort of Greek and Roman theater type of waves with fake ships sailing over them. You can see the really defined two lines that separate the stage and the scenery backdrop. And Pamela Coleman Smith did work in the theater. She was a costume and set designer, um, or set painter, maybe. I'm not sure how much she sort of constructed or whatever, but so there are these cards in the Minor Arcana, and I think there's probably been lots of speculation about why they are the way they are. And nobody knows, I don't think. I haven't done a ton of research into it myself, but as I was looking at it, it actually started with this card. And it made me think about sort of tarot for the 21st century and what being performative can mean for some of these cards. And like I said, I don't have any answers. These are just my thoughts. But it did strike me that if there's a stage and an actor, then by definition there's an audience right here in front, sort of watching. That's the implication of having a stage in a picture, is that there's an audience looking in. And so then obviously the Two of Pentacles is like juggling things, keeping them afloat, but also a performative aspect, right? That people can see your efforts and your work, and that maybe you're doing it for the benefit of others watching, which I think is really interesting in this era where we're all being watched. As I film this video that's going to be put on YouTube that some people will maybe watch, there's a performative aspect to it. And so it changes for me some of the thoughts about how I might interpret the cards if I was so moved to do it in that way on that day for any particular reason. Because certainly when I'm juggling many things, having others acknowledge it can be a really gratifying thing, right? I see how busy you are. I know you're working hard. And it can feel very lonely if you feel like that's not being seen. And so I think that idea of being seen is pretty interesting. The same goes for the Ten of Wands. Struggling and overburdened with too much so that you can't see your actual destination. And that, again, can be a very lonely feeling. But again, this staged card sort of implies that there's someone watching you in that struggle, maybe even someone who's able to help you with that struggle, but you're not turning your eyes around to see what that resource or what that person might be. The Four of Wands. Although this celebration, I mean, every celebration is a struggle, right? Like every celebration is for public consumption. And in this case, this is a super interesting one because I don't know if this is a stage card or not. Are these people painted on the backdrop? Are they real people coming out? Are there going to be actors coming out in a minute? This one's a real head scratcher. But if I'm thinking about a big celebration or like a wedding, yeah, it's all just it's so much for the visual impact of other people. People consuming that experience and the eyes on that experience. Um, I tend to just interpret that one as that those are real people, and I don't really understand the stage aspect of this card, but it's there. It's got the double lines. So maybe those people in the background are just the scenery to help to sort of stage the magic of whatever sort of ceremony or idea it is that you're going to put on. I don't know. It's interesting. Um, I find that a lot of the cards that I associate with like work and craft are the stage cards, or like being busy, or and again, that idea of the recognition of your hard work and you're honing your craft. You're on a stage, there is an implied audience, and therefore your work will be seen and recognized, which is an interesting dimension to think about. The Five of Swords. What is the implication of this battle being publicly viewed for public consumption? Who are you in this card? Are you the one in the forefront? Are you one at the back? Is there a performative aspect to it? Is it a confrontation that is in a business meeting? It's largely mental and you're actually working out a particular problem. I don't know, but it's interesting that it's staged with this backdrop, this scenery, which again implies a performance. This one I feel like, now this one is interesting. As you can see, that to me is a single line. I feel like that's different. There's clearly a double line in the other, particularly the Five of Swords. Actually, it might just be the coloring, but it's really clear. But boy, that sure looks backdroppy to me. And I think people include this one, so I'll include it. But maybe it's not intended to be a stage card. But I feel like, again, I love the cups, the emotions of the cups. Sorry, I'm getting my face in the way. I tend to really take the cup suit as like sincere and super personal and emotional. But it's so interesting that the couple has their backs to the audience and you can see the kids dancing, but not their faces. And I think you could interpret this as like your Instagram life. I mean, I don't have Instagram because I have Twitter and Facebook and that's enough. But that idea that you're projecting outwards, right? That you are demonstrating, and maybe, totally sincerely, but this demonstration of your whole life, and by whole, I don't mean entire, I mean like the satisfaction of your own life, the things that we put out to the world that are curated, that we design so that people see us in a particular light, which is a really human thing to do. But the idea that this might be on stage and that the actors have their backs to the audience, they're not showing necessarily their full faces. And this could be a very interesting card to interpret in that way. And of course, totally not what Pamela Coleman Smith intended. I don't expect she was spending a ton of her time on Instagram when she was designing these cards, but it's interesting to think about. There are a few more, but I think I've sort of largely made my point. This is great. This it's sneaky and yet it's on stage. So maybe like a cartoon sort of villain sort of idea. This reminds me of like taking a little kid to a play and they're whispering like, look behind you, to the villain. But it's just really interesting to think about. He thinks he's getting away with it, but there are eyes watching him because he's on stage. And it doesn't all have to be, I feel like there could be sort of a negative connotation to this, but I don't think it has to be this way. The Six of Pentacles is also staged, which I find really interesting because I do take this as a very sincere, giving kind of card. But maybe it's that, not that you have to promote yourself in what you're doing, but maybe the thing that you're giving to needs to be shown to a wider audience, right? Maybe people don't know and understand the things you put your energy to because you think they're important, and you think that they are important to people's health, their well-being, and maybe just to share those ideas a bit more with people, whether it's about, being a vegetarian or a vegan, or maybe it's about raising awareness about Parkinson's or cancer awareness or ALS or something like that. But it's a staged card. Um, so I just think it's interesting to think about. And half the time, I probably won't even think about it. But they're in there, and I don't know why. So that means that I get to interpret and think about them in that way. So those are just my thoughts on maybe interpreting the staged cards with the stages in them, or just thinking about it as you look at them. And if it works, then use, and if it doesn't feel right, then don't use, don't discard. Oh, and look who's here once again. Once again, cat bombed. Oh gosh. Have a great day. Bye.